Welcome back to Namaste Front-End System Design, and today we are going to discuss about the next module, which is testing. So testing, my dear friends, is a very important part when it comes to system design or even becoming a front-end senior engineer, right? So if you want to be a senior engineer, you cannot skip testing. And there is a famous myth in the industry that testing is not a job of a developer. But let me tell you that even if you are a developer, it's your role and responsibility to write test cases and make sure that your application is well tested and when you write test cases, it gives you a lot of confidence, and it is your job to make it uh, really good, right? And you cannot miss testing in that. What do you want to say, Chirag, about this?
Yeah, definitely. So, as you mentioned, like Akshay, this is going to be very interesting because there are a lot of myth. Like my job, because I am a developer, my job is to write the functionality, get the feature done, and ship it. Who is responsible for maintaining the stability of it? Right? Who is going to ensure that this code which I have written is not written for today, but it is also going to work as it is when multiple people start contributing to that, right? So having right set of test cases, it can be any kind of test cases that we will be covering around, but that is very, very important. So as we say, like very fundamental thing, anyone can write the code, but writing the right set of code which works for all the scenarios and which works today and which will work tomorrow also is very difficult. And that's how a person who is early stage and a person who is a senior engineer is distinguished. What do you say, Akshay?
Distinct. Exactly. And what I was telling was, see, testing is will make your code stable, and creating a product is easy. Maintaining is hard, right? Let me repeat it once again. Ki creating a product is easy, writing code first time is easy, but then maintaining is very hard. And another important question is, why do actually we need testing? So I'll tell you, right? You don't need testing if you are building a very small application. You don't really need to, right? Because it's a very small thing. It has just 2-3 features. Everything works fine. If something breaks, so you get to know very soon. But suppose if you have a huge application, right, with thousands of features, and so suppose if when you are building the MVP or the first version of your application, you built like 5-6 features. But then how the development works ahead is that you keep on adding feature on the top of these 5-6 features. 7th feature, 8th feature, 9th feature, 10th feature. And when you are adding that 10th feature, how are you confident that the code you wrote for 10th feature is not affecting the code for rest of the features? Because at the end of the day, it's whole the same code base, right? Every line of code you add is affecting a lot of pieces inside your code, right? So that's what I'm saying, that testing comes into very important, it plays a very important role when it comes to adding feature. So you have to test the whole app to make sure that everything is running fine, even when you add code to it or do whatever you want to with your system. Isn't it, Chirag?
Yeah, very rightly said. So with that, Akshay, why people are excited about? Oh, you talked about so much in terms of the testing and whatnot. What exactly what we are going to cover in terms of the roadmap in this episode or maybe this module?
Yes, exactly. So, see, in this module, we basically will learn everything about front end system design or system testing, right? Not system design, system testing. And when you talk about front end system testing, then we will see from a perspective of a developer. See, there is now, you might think that, okay, there is a separate testing team. But see, the job of testing team is very different than what developers test. So it's very different, right? And developers cannot skip testing, even though if you have a testing team, right? So testing team, let me segregate the roles and responsibility first, then we'll check about what we are going to cover. So first thing is, understand that testing team is responsible for actually the manual testing that we all do, even testers and the developers. Then another thing is, testing team is basically responsible for writing automation test cases, right? They are basically writing code that tests your application, and there are different level of testing in the testing team, right? They go dive deep into a lot of things, right? They go a lot of in depth when it comes to testing. But for developers, we write unit test cases. That is the first and the most important thing. What do you mean by unit test case? Right? Can you explain, Chirag? Right?
Yeah,
You can go ahead and take a jab at
definitely.
it.
As the name suggests, unit, what it meant by, you are writing so much code, you pick a small unit and ensure that one single unit is working perfectly fine. Example, you may be
Yes.
building a maybe a car. In that car you have very small parts, even you have a nut bolt.
Yes.
You just check the functionality of nut bolt. If that working fine, it has the right dimension, length, right set of screw and everything. Similarly, you are building some application, you have small functions. Maybe you have created a function in order to check, oh, either it takes the odd number, even number. Very simple thing, right? Just check, does it gives you in all the scenario the right answer? Given an input, you have the right output. Even it is edge case, it can be negative numbers, it can be zero number, it can be very huge number, right? Any such coordinate
And
thing.
mapping this car example to real life tech example is, let me give you an example. Suppose if you're building an amazon.com, right? Everybody has used amazon.com, isn't it? Or any e-commerce website, right? So over there you have a cart. So you added some items into the cart, right? Suppose you have 5 items in the cart already. What happens when you click on that delete button, right? So when you click on that delete button, the there were 5 items, now they should be 4. So this is one test case.
Yeah.
Similarly, you write lots of test case, and we are just testing one unit, which is the delete functionality, right? That can be one test case. So if you click on the delete button, that 5 number goes to 4. This is the test case, right? That earlier the number was 5, I clicked on delete, now the number becomes 4.
Yeah.
And whatsoever feature do I add, right? Suppose if I am adding tomorrow like random features on top of us, every time my delete should work the same way,
Yeah.
right? My system will make sure that everything works well. So this is what basically is about testing, right? Unit testing. There are more types of testing. Sometimes, Chirag, as you said, what are the different types of testing? So sometimes developers also do A/B testing. What do you mean by A/B testing? So I'll give you an example. So I was working. Let me talk about my experience also with testing. So I was working with Lending Cart. So Lending Cart was a company which used to give loans to people, right? We used to give loans, personal loan, business loan, and all that stuff, right? So now when you go onto the website, so there was a CTA button, right? Call to action button. So that button loan was uh, apply for loan, right? That button name was apply for loan, right? Uh, and then, so what we did a A/B testing. So there was a confusion. Should we write apply for loan over there? Or should we write get started? Should we write uh, start the application? Right? Should we write what? Right? What should be that main CTA? And let me tell you, we did a A/B testing. And then what does A/B testing means? You have suppose two three options, right? A/B means one and second option, one or two options. But A/B testing can have multiple options also. Suppose if you want that that button can have three texts, right? Get quote or apply now or apply for loan or something like that. So what we did, we make three scenarios. We made three scenarios and we did a A/B test, and we found out that one of them got like 50-60% clicks. It was 60% more efficient than the rest of them. So that means that is the best CTA, and we applied over there. And we actually see the business growing. These things humans can't test naturally, right? We might have an intuition that okay, I write apply loans and it might work good, but unless you test it, unless you have those numbers, you cannot say. So that is kind of A/B testing. There are lots of things inside testing, right? There's something known as test-driven development. Maybe Chirag, do you want to elaborate more on it?
Yeah. So test driven. So simple word, if you have to understand, is our as a developer, our mind setup is get the functionality done and then write the test cases with respect to that, which is most of the time
Yes.
biased. Because at the time of writing the program, I was aware that these are the scenarios that need to be covered, and I'm going to write the
Uh-huh.
test cases for those scenarios only, which I have already covered in the feature, or you can say the function that I've written. This says that no, you don't have to think about the implementation first. You think about the use cases that need to be fit into those function or the capability or the feature that you are building. You think from a user perspective. It should be work for zero condition, negative condition, positive condition. If like Akshay was talking about cart example, what will happen if there is no more
Item.
quantity, basically item available, right? If that doesn't goes to your pin code, right? What if there are different prices in different pin code? So thinking about all those scenarios, first listing it down, then writing your code, converting from those test cases to your code to ensure that, boss, yes, the business use cases which I thought is now covered in your programming code that you have written. This is something very important that I've seen. It's people find it difficult, but trust me, guys, you may not write a full-fledged test cases, but if you have right set of scenarios listed down and then writing your code, it makes your both the life easy. Please do not, most of the people I recommend, please do not jump directly into the coding and don't get into that. So one thing I wanted to highlight regarding the A/B testing, Akshay, what you said. My entire
Yes,
career
yes.
has been more around seeing people, especially working in the industry, which does huge A/B testing. Starting from moving it, you
Okay.
get notifications, you get different, as Akshay was talking about, different notifications. Someone will get different color theming, different text,
Yes,
different kind
exactly.
of personalized, you can say, notification we used to get either using SMS and whatnot. So that is huge. You use Flipkart, and Flipkart, the page that you see and the page the other people see, right, are most of the time
Different.
different depending on which city you are accessing. Either it is a promotion going on in your area and whatnot. So huge A/B testing is being covered, which I see throughout my career, and which is very important. As Akshay was talking about, business are driven, business experiment a lot, and using these ABs, business sees lot of elevation in their you can say performance and the CTAs and whatnot.
And decisions should be taken driven by data,
Yeah.
right? Your data is telling that out of 100, 70 people are clicking on one button and 30% people are clicking on the second button. So obviously you would keep 70% one, right? So it all everything these are known as data driven decisions which big companies take. One more example for A/B testing was as soon as you land on the lending card website, there used to be a background image. So earlier, initially that image was of a elderly man, okay, elderly man who used to look good, right? And we had that on the poster. Then we changed it to a young guy, right? So we did a A/B testing with elderly men and young guy, right? And then we found out that elderly man was much more appealing, and the retention of users on the website was more when they see that, right? For some reason, right?
Yeah.
And then we kept it, and then it really creates an effect, right? But I mean, we have seen those results happening. So that is where A/B testing plays a crucial role.
Definitely.
Talking about test-driven development, there are perks and cons, right? Pros and cons of test-driven development. Initially, it's a very good to have thing, right? That you if you can do test-driven development, but a lot of companies don't do it. Now you might ask me why, Akshay? It sounds so good. Why not? Because it comes with a lot of cost. The cost of that, right? See, to develop a feature and following TDD, it would take 2x time. But let me tell you, it will make your code very stable, right? Very stable. And test-driven development also means that your test coverage will never fall below 100 because you are writing test first and then writing code for it, right? So your test coverage will be always 100 and even more than that, right? So this is what the major thing is. Now talking about more things, right? Now we can write. Let's not explain everything over here and let's not teach everything in this video itself because there are a lot more things to cover in detail in rest of the videos. But let me also talk a little bit about that. There are different types of unit testing also. When you go inside unit testing, there are separate things. If you take an example, let me take an example in front end only. So there can be component level testing, which is known as component testing. Now there is something known as integration testing, where you have multiple components talking to each other and you do a testing overall. Then there is end-to-end testing, which is like end-to-end testing the full feature flow or something, right? So there are different type of testing. In upcoming videos we might want to see right what all we can dive deep and see what is there inside each of them, right?
Yeah.
So Chirag, right, let's move on to a little bit about what are the expectations from freshers and senior engineer, right? Suppose if I'm a fresher, then should I know everything about this? What if a senior engineer, how much should a experienced person know? How much should a fresher should know about this?
Yeah,
Can you talk a little bit about that?
definitely. Akshay, as you are talking about different roles and responsibilities that we have, like some people, some very few companies nowadays have those testers specifically sitting. Basically, most of the product-based
Yes.
company have given that responsibility. You are a developer, you
To
understand
developers.
your code, you understand the feature well. You make your code
Yes.
stable. End-to-end creation to stability is your job. Now, like we have people like manual testing, who does the initial kind of testing to ensure whatever feature you have built can be shipped as soon as possible. But one thing is very important for everyone. Either you are junior or a senior, irrespective of that, you should know how to write unit test cases. Like if you are shipping something into the code, most of the companies now have some checks
Yes.
like test coverage check in the PR itself in your
Yes.
pipeline.
Yes. Yes.
If
Yes.
you don't follow that, boss, your PR is not going to happen. That is very important.
Same.
Second thing, integration testing are good, but most of the time what happens, people have to decide which two component are critical use cases where most of the issues or bugs basically come. Let's ensure that this integration happens always, because there may be some
Yes.
contract changes happening over the period of time, because there are few things happening changing, so you wanted to ensure that these works in isolation perfectly fine. That is what people do. Now for senior engineer is very important. You may not be directly doing the end-to-end testing, writing the playwright or Cypress code, but ensuring that exists in your code or in your team, that is very, very important. For that, you should have a very good understanding where setting up those basic infra where people can write guidelines where how to write basically is something a senior job responsibility. Now at a feature level, contribution level, it again comes to your fresher where or a junior developer, you have to keep on writing those end-to-end test cases
Yeah.
as you are developing your feature. So most of the time senior guys are responsible to have a solid understanding, along with that setup of those things, getting things done, having a pipeline, and then the junior developers come and contribute in individual small chunks in these areas. What do you say, Akshay?
And yes, you are right. And if you are a senior engineer, it is your responsibility to also take a call whether what should be a must-have test case and what should be a good-to-have test case and what should be it's like no need or we can skip that or something, right?
Yeah.
You should be uh, taking that decision for you that we cannot push the code if this portion is not tested, right? Some critical pieces of your application should always be tested before even going to production. And you said a very good thing, Chirag. I recall my days of Uber, right? In Uber, we had a check, right? That if your test coverage is less than 80%, then it won't even let you check your code onto, right? We had a different tool for Git, right? So basically, you can't push your code onto a remote, right?
Yeah.
So that was the issue. And we had to write test cases because, see, it is a company wide decision also. When I was working in lending cart, so we had a separate testing team. In Paytm, we had a separate testing team. But then again, in Paytm also, not every team has its own separate testing team, right? There were big teams. There were few teams which has their own separate testing teams. Some teams have to take help from others testers, right? So something like that, but still there was a support of testing in Paytm. But in Uber, they had a policy that we don't want testers. It's developers' job to keep the code stable, right? So at least in our team in Uber India Hyderabad, we did not have any testers. We all developers were responsible to write our test cases, everything, right? It's
Yeah.
it's our job, right, to make things stable and maintain them as well.
Very true. Yep.
Yep. So this is what it is. And can we talk a little bit more about maybe some interview experience or interview benefits or maybe some interview questions, Chirag, around testing?
Yeah, definitely. So, first of all, like there are companies, there are people who wanted to assess you. Have you really written some test cases
Yes.
or not? They wanted to understand that, because for some companies it is
Yes.
very critical, as we were discussing. So, before jumping into that, I wanted to give you real world examples. I have seen companies, especially like if I talk about my company, Microsoft, or I know friends from Google, there are hotfix. Hotfix are like something is broken on the production, guys. You have to fix it as soon as possible. Now, like every PR have those checks basically. Unless you have those coverage, you cannot ship it. Irrespective of that, like even it is critical, but there are some policies that you have to follow. else you have to get the approval from your director or VP level in order to skip those things. Now you know, like the efficiency with which you write the code, you should have the efficiency writing in the test cases also, because you have written the fix but you don't have the test case. What will happen? Your customer will keep on compromising on that. As coming back, like when we talk about test cases, people wanted to understand what kind of test cases you have written. Now, other thing which is important, for what purposes you have written the test cases. Third thing which is test in almost all the interviews that we go around in, especially machine coding round or the UI tech round, where the problem statements are given, people do check, okay, have you covered those scenarios or not? Covering the edge case or the base case, what is that? Is actually a test case basically we are talking about. What you get in the sample code, okay, you have to write a function and this function should basically pass all these test cases. So people are actually one way or the other way, directly or indirectly, asking you, can you either create those test cases or satisfy those test cases, is the vice versa, which is very, very important. And especially I've seen people giving in the interview test driven utilities. What does it mean by? You will get all the test cases of the utility that need to be created. Now you write a functionality which actually satisfies that, or the vice versa. I have this functionality written, tell me what are the test cases and write some test cases basically which are going to fit to those cases. Yes. For if you are a web developer, front-end developer, or even a back-end developer, asking you to implement maybe end-to-end test cases may not be that for you, unless someone is automation engineer, especially who's asked in the interview, okay, let's write the end-to-end, but the scenarios can be asked. Like, okay, tell me if we have to test a cart functionality, and what are the things that you will be considering in order to basically cover those as an end-to-end. Now you have to think about. Now you can't be just a front-end developer who's thinking about, I have a component, it has props and it has a state redux state changes and I need to just test it. No, your responsibility is to test the entire flow, starting from the user click to the visibility, to the data state, to the backend, to what you get as an updated state, and finally ensuring that the things that are there are also persist in the database. So everything basically comes into the picture, which is make it end-to-end testing, and that is something important. What do you say, Akshay? What are the experiences that you have seen in interviews?
Exactly. So you're very right on point, Chirag, when you said that. And just to add on to your topic, see, when the interviewers are asking you to test something, right? I'll give you an example. I was given an interview for Grab, right? So when I was giving that interview, interviewer asked me to code a feature, right? I don't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember that when I coded that feature, I was done with it. I said, okay, this is done, right? This is how it is implemented. Now the interviewer asked me, now test it, right? And I was like, for a sudden, I was like, what does the interviewer expecting me to, right? But then, so basically, when the interviewer will ask you to test something, he is basically asking you, just listen to me very carefully, he is basically asking you to, he wants to see your approach. Suppose if you have built something, how would you go ahead and test it? Right? What is your approach? First of all, do you understand that feature? Can you think about the corner cases of that feature? Right? And then coming up with code to test those corner features, right? Corner cases. So if you take a example of cart, right? So I can ask you to build a cart, right? And then you can write add cart, delete cart, and all that stuff. Then I can ask you, can you test this? So now it is your responsibility to have an eye of a tester and then see what happens if the cart is empty, what happens if you overload the cart, what happens if uh, some items are not deliverable on your area, or like so many random things. Can you think about those test cases? Once the first step is thinking about those corner cases, these test cases, then can you come up with code to write all of that, right? And then the interviewer can also ask you to write code for a few of these cases, right? They can, that is what's happened with me in the interview. He said that, okay, write code for this small thing. And then you can just write a small thing, right? They just want to know your approach basically, right? It doesn't matter that your code is functional or something, right? Don't get afraid if somebody is asking you to write test cases in interview, but then they actually want to see how you are approaching that problem. That is the first and the most important thing, right? That was my experience with testing. And then yes, being able to test the component or whatever code you are writing is a very good skill. and interviewers will definitely appreciate you if you tell this in the interview, right?
Yeah.
Anything you would like to add, Chirag, here?
Two things. So one thing, at least know, at least go and implement, write some test cases, all of these test cases using some popular libraries, like either it is Jest or
Yes.
React testing library
Just
or Playwright.
React testing
just
library.
just go and experiment around that, which is important. You may not get that
Yes.
opportunity in your current company, it's okay, but knowing those fundamentals, when you get that opportunity, you are like, no, 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 now I have a learning curve of 1 month and 2 months in order to implement. That is not going to work always. Second thing I wanted to, excuse me, people, I know multiple people are going to listen this out. So if I have to say, if our tester have to write the test cases and if our developer has to write the test cases, there is one difference I wanted to highlight on a very high level. Testers comes with expertise, experience. He does a lot of
Yes.
monkey test cases. He knows where generally people does that. But when a developer writes a test cases, he knows the nerve of another developer. He knows the pulse of the other developer. How generally people write it, right? What are the scenarios which other developers generally we think we will cover it, right? And that day that we will cover it never comes. And developer knows it very well that what are the scenarios the other developer might have considered and might have not considered. So if you are writing the test cases, trust me, you can write a very strong strengthened test cases which will make your system very you can say strong in terms of the coverage and bug prone. What do you say, Akshay, on that?
Exactly. Exactly. That was a very nice point, right? I did not think from that perspective, but then yes, definitely. Developers know, right? They have written the code and they also know that how somebody would have implemented a feature. So obviously you have an upper edge when you think about those corner cases and the checks in place. Definitely second your point, Chirag. Right? And so, right, talking about the last thing, one important hack, let me give it to you right away in this. So, whenever you are giving an interview, suppose if your interviewers don't even ask about testing, just mention testing somewhere, right? It's a very small hack, I'm telling you, right? Suppose if you're doing some machine coding, right? Somebody has asked you to build a feature. Build that feature and say that I can test it like this, right? That extra effort you put and say about that I can test it like this. Or if you have some time in interview, just write test cases for it. Even if it is not working, some random basic test cases, just write it up. I'll 100% guarantee that the interviewer will be impressed.
I
Because,
can relate it very well. One simple thing,
right,
as you actually said,
100%
right?
guarantee.
Like
Yes.
someone said, "Are you done?" So probably just saying "I'm done almost." If even if you say "I'm
Yes.
almost cover 80% of coverage," or what we
Uh-huh.
have, that makes a difference because you think about the coverage. You are not thinking about getting
Yes.
the job done, right? So even a small
Exactly.
statement tweaks it. I second that. Yep, makes sense.
And this happened with me actually. See, I was interviewing, and then there was a guy. I asked him to code something. So he said, "Okay, I am coding." He coded everything. I was like, "Okay, have you built it?" Will they wait? I just need 2 more minutes. Then he started writing test cases. And I was like, "Wow,
Impressed.
what is this?" Right? He started writing test cases, and he was like, "Okay, this is the feature. These are the test cases. This is how we'll test it. Everything is working perfectly fine." And I was like, I did not even have a second chance of picking his corner case or something. He was perfect at it, and it was a strong hire then for me, right? I was like, dude, right? If you are even thinking that there is something known as testing and you can test something, it's a big win for you, right? So, uh, you will get brownie points if you mention testing, and it's not just in front of your developers or technical rounds. Even when your manager is asking, right, about you, you are describing about things. So when you're talking about your past experience, also describe that I built this feature, I built this system, in this system we did this, and then also pitch in, oh, I was testing this feature, we had a 80% test coverage. Just mention 2 3 lines about testing. It gives a very great impact if you're talking to a manager, right? Manager or senior people, they they are impressed if you talk about all these things, right? uh, testing is testing and maturity of a developer kind of like coincides. Okay,
Guys,
so a
note it down
more
in the
mature
bold.
the,
Note it
yes,
down in the
it
bold,
can
man.
be a quote, it can be extracted as a quote, right? But I'm telling you, testing and maturity of a developer, the more the mature the developer is, the more emphasis they will give on testing. And you can see that in your companies also, junior people don't care about testing. They feel it's like a silly thing that they need to do. They just copy paste here and there test cases and then just try to fill it to make the coverage go up. But see, as senior you go, the more system failures you have seen, the more you will realize that testing is very
Yeah.
important.
One experience
So
maybe
this was a quick
Akshay.
hack.
Yeah, one experience I wanted to give from my real world, which have really
Yes.
almost screwed me up.
Uh-huh.
Being thinking that I'm a senior and a smart person, I know what this code is written. So I will tell you incidents.
Yeah.
I joined my current company, and basically there was some changes that I have to do, and there was something related to the regex. And I was sure
Uh-huh.
the kind of data that we have, the new regex which I have enhanced, basically it is going to work with the data which I have seen and the data which we wanted to add on, and it was perfectly fine. It was working smoothly fine. We have multiple station rollout. Basically it went to one station, it went to other station, and in the third station it broke, and I was like surprised, boss, this can't happen. So all of a sudden, basically, then I realized there was a test cases which was failing, and I fixed that test cases considering the new regex and ignoring the old. I was just thinking this is some deprecated test case which is written and it doesn't have any value or meaning because I haven't seen such kind of data. Then I got to know there are customers who are having a data from a very long time, and the old scenario, old time, there was use cases where people were using that kind of, you can say, data set. And then I was like, oh shit, like what I meant by, if you do the justice, and that test case was written 3 years back, guys. So remember, whenever you do justice into your code base, when you write the right set of test case, you are not just safeguarding for today, but you can think of like 3 years back I got to hit a test case where I could have almost dumped the good amount of user, and finally then I realized my mistake, boss. You can't understate any of the test cases which are written. They are written for some purpose. So just leverage it,
Yes.
go expertise, put in your existing system, if not in a very good shape, but at least start writing for your code that you are writing, not for someone else, for yourself, for your own code, and ensuring that my code is never going to break when I remain in the company or I leave the company, right?
Yes, that's the legacy that you create, and very good thing, right, Chirag? I think there are endless stories about testing and systems failing in, but then yes, we should wind this video over here, and I think this is the longest video in all the modules introduction that we have created, and that itself speaks that how important testing is. So don't miss that, and become a really good tester along with a developer. It is a very add-on skill, and let me tell you that the initial learning curve of testing is huge, right? You might feel an initial entry barrier, but once you learn it, right, it just takes, I would say, if you start testing your application, it would just take not even a week to get good at testing. Once you get good at testing, everything becomes very matlab, it's not like you have a steep learning curve and then it's going up. No, you just learn testing and then it slowly becomes, you'll become very comfortable with writing test cases.
Yeah.
So it's just that initial learning curve. I think a lot of us developers don't even start testing. That is the only reason why don't we even test. But do that. It's very important. And that's all from my side. Anything you would like to add, Chirag, before we
Last,
end this?
don't write test cases saying that function to be defined. So people who know testing knows it very well. So don't write test cases for the namesake of covering. I have written 10 test cases.
Yes.
See you in the upcoming episodes, basically, and we will be covering a lot of interesting thing in terms of the testing.
Yep. Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.